Funny, I look out here and I see so many different people who haven't all been here for all this, and then I see people who've been here for all of it, and then I see missing, well, I don't see the missing people, but they're gone. Yeah. So it's funny. Every single week it's different. So hopefully we're getting this all put together. Thanks for coming out tonight. This is week 3 of our How We Do Life Together series here in June, just sharing about who we are as a church and where we're heading and what God is doing. And how many of you enjoyed the last couple weeks? If you've been here, there's been some awesome stuff that we've shared, some great testimonies, some cool information. We really talked about life groups last week and the launching of that in the fall and what that's going to look like. And so there's a lot of great feedback on that. And it's just been really awesome. So tonight, we're going to be focusing on something called interest groups. So we have life groups that are going to be starting in the fall. These interest groups have already kind of had a slow launch. They've already been going. I've been talking about this from the pulpit. If you've heard anything about my fly fishing stuff, I share that a lot. Well, when we first started talking about having a fly fishing group, we're kind of like, well, why not give it a shot and see? And so we've kind of had a little bit of a beta test on these interest groups. And it's pretty amazing. We have 35 people who are part of this Central Fly group, this interest group. And they don't all show up at the same time when we go out fly fishing and whatnot. But you might have 4 one week. You might have 20 the next. And it's just so different. But it's some pretty cool stuff that happens. And so tonight, we're going to be focusing more on those interest groups and this two-pronged approach of life groups and interest groups at Central, because relationships are important. And you might not realize how much interest groups have played a really impactful role in your life until you realize what it is we're talking about. How many of you have ever had time that you've spent with people that you've built relationship with? Maybe you have a pinochle group. Anybody have a pinochle group? Is that not a thing in Great Falls? Okay, in Helena it was. But, I had this group of people in Helena that would get together and play pinochle. Like all the time. They just play pinochle and they talk and they do whatever. And they did this for years. There's one group that I know that goes on an anniversary trip every year. Like it's the anniversary trip for the spouses, and they just do one big trip and they do it together. There's like 3 or 4 couples that go. And they've done that for years. And how many of you know that's an interest group? That's what it looks like. You're like, oh, I don't understand, Pastor. Watch this video and get a little bit better picture of what we're talking about.
So I heard about this group by Pastor Josh actually texting me and was like, hey, we have a fly fishing thing going on this Saturday. If you want to come, you can. We'll provide the gear and all that. I'm like, I haven't been fly fishing before, but hey, I thought I'd try it. I mean, I like fishing, so I thought I'd try fly fishing. I say it was a lot of fun. The drive was amazing. Got to have some nice conversations, just talking about all sorts of different things. And when we got there, we just got all our gear together and we set out. And Pastor Josh just showed us some techniques and stuff on how he does things. So taught me too. And I think the main thing is conversations. Just different things. We talk about different things and just things that are being brought up, just really anything. We had a good time. We were there for a couple hours, and then after that, we hiked a little bit back to the truck, and we went back into town. We got some food, and we were there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, because we were having more conversations. Food was good too, but I think that the best part was the experience of conversation. is having those, it's connections between people. And that's what's really important. That's what brings churches together. It's what brings people together as a community.
Hey, isn't that awesome that ministry can take place outside of the church? And it's so much effective in just the conversation of the things that can happen. Even yesterday, we did young adults, and the time of prayer that was spent and the time of fellowship was just amazing. And you don't always get that in the church. Sometimes it's so organic and it's just so good when it happens outside. And so I just love the direction that God is taking us in and some of the opportunities we're going to have. And so what we're going to do today is, do you guys remember the classrooms you were in last week? Raise your hand if you remember them. Okay, you're going to be in those same classrooms today. If you're new, just hang out here in the auditorium and we'll assign you a classroom number. And then we're going to break up. We're going to go into those groups. When you're done, come on down. We have some awesome snacks, some delicious treats for you guys to devour and eat and get some good gains. So we encourage you to come down and hang out and see what we have to offer. So if you guys want to go ahead and go to your classrooms, that'd be great.
Mike, you got the most comfortable spot in the whole house. No, don't apologize. That's what it's there for. All right. You're kicking yourself now, aren't you?
Well, here's the thing. We sat there last week, and I was like, no, we're going to sit up front. And now I am.
Michael's got a room back there if you need to put your feet up. Well, hello, everyone. We're changing things up with us a little bit because I want to be able to see the rest of you and talk a little bit. And there's always one.
Yeah, it's me.
It's me.
Yep.
So let me start before we jump into interest groups, which I'm really excited about. This is one that, this was my idea. There's actually not much stuff around Central that was actually my idea, but this was it. I was like, it would be cool if. That's how this started. It'd be cool if. And then we started doing it, and I'm like, man, God, you're doing something with this. And I'm going to share a little bit more about Marcus's story, who was on the video just a little bit ago, too. But so, any questions from last week? You've had a whole week to think about stuff. We talked about life groups last week. We talked about your flashlight's like flashing.
I know.
Does it do that? I just won't look at that flashlight.
Apologize.
It's like it's doing a strobe over there. Squirrel! Sorry. So,
It is.
talking about life groups, yeah, go ahead.
I wasn't here because I'm out of town. But,
Awesome.
But
Okay.
I would like to know what I missed. Could you just give it like a 1 or 2 sentence summary?
Yeah. Actually, I think I still have my notes from, maybe from last week. The reason we have notes is so that we don't preach for an hour. That's why we have notes. There we go, okay. Yeah, so I don't know exactly, that's the only downside to this little switcheroo we just did with me and Cody. But I don't know what exactly you guys talked about last week, so I'm just going to give you the quick overview, okay?
Yeah.
So basically, beginning in the fall, August 21st, that week, yeah, we're going to be launching our what we're calling life groups. If you were here the first week, how many of you were here the first week? Okay, you saw the video of Dunkirk, and we talked about the little ships and the importance of having these communities that reached out to other people. And being a big ship, sometimes it's hard to get up to the shore, and you have to be able to have some sort of mode of transportation to get people into the big ship. And so, talking about how important life is, and to do life together, which is why we're calling this training Life Together. One of the most important things we found is that when you're in groups, you grow small. We want to be a church that loves big and grows small. And so as we've been talking about life groups, this has been a progression. Like when I got here, we started dreaming about what is it that God would want us to do to help us have on-ramps. And the question I asked in our group last week is I said, what is it that we have for brand new people coming to Central? And also for people who have just given their lives to Christ and now they're like, now what? Now what do I do? Central had really nothing. And I know several groups talked about Alpha. They're like, well, what about Alpha? Well, Alpha is really a pre, and I know Cavaliers, you guys have been in Alpha, you guys can speak to this. The Alpha is really a before you even know Jesus thing. I mean, there's people who are atheists or around the table at Alpha who came in and they don't even know if they really want to be there. Like it is like really like pre-evangelism almost. So it's not the same thing as basics of the faith. Like, what does it mean to study the Bible? What does it mean to pray? What does it mean to serve or give or any of these kinds of things? And so there's no on-ramp at Central. So you had Alpha, which was like before Jesus. And, you know, like maybe there's people who said, I don't even like Jesus. I mean, people said that at Alpha. And you have that, and then you had like our Wednesday night Bible studies where you stepped into that. You had to have at least somewhat of a knowledge of what the Old Testament is. What's the New Testament? Who's Elijah? I mean, it's really hard, and we heard a lot of that feedback. Is they're like, I feel like I'm jumping into a huge pool without knowing how to swim. And so we had nothing in between. So how do we get people connected to Central? And so we started talking about that, and actually some of this started with Jesse. Even before I came, you're in here, so I'll pick on you a little.
She sounds great.
Even before we got voted in, Jesse and I had a conversation. She was in the selection committee. I don't know if you knew that, but is that okay to say?
Sure.
Doesn't matter now, right? Anyway, so we were talking about this, and she says, you know, I kind of have a dream of being able to do something that's classes for like basics of the faith. People need to know the basics. And we started thinking, well, we don't have anything like that. And so going into the fall, one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting our life groups, and one of those things is going to be 101 life groups. We're going to have 101, 201, 301, 401, and just like you would in any place, like John, I'm sure you guys have training and different things at the plant. You have different levels of training. People have been certified in different levels of training. And so that's kind of what this is going to be. It's going to be helping people understand, like if I'm learning the basics, I should start at 101. And I should go through the prayer class. I should go through the Bible study class. And we're going to tell people, it's like, go through all the 101 classes. And it's going to be 4-week rotations. It's like you're in a class for 4 weeks. You're done with that. You move on to another class. Do that for 4 weeks. And all the 101 classes are all going to be 4-week classes. Just teaching people how to be in a group, how to be a part of this, how to grow, and then moving it fast. We're doing it on Sundays because we want to make it easiest for those who are brand new to the faith and those who can barely make it to church. I don't know if you know this, but we have a lot of pre-release people who are coming to church. It's hard for a lot of them to get here on Wednesday nights. It's almost impossible for some of them. And so we want to make it as easy as possible for the ones who we should make it easy as possible for. We want to make room in the boat for people, knowing that the ones who are more mature in the faith are going to make time, and they're going to figure out a way to be here on Wednesday nights. They're going to figure out a way to make time for that. And so moving 101s and doing that from our 9 to 10 o'clock slot, which used to be called discipleship, we're just changing the language. We're changing the format. It's going to be a little bit more relational. And so then we're also going to have 201, which is just membership class at this point. Because you don't want a brand new Christian coming in and becoming a member of the church. You need to let them grow a little bit before they jump into a full membership within the church, right? And so then on Wednesday nights is going to be 301, which we're encouraging that to go through the summer. And then in the summers, we're going to take a Sabbath, which is important. Allow things to rest, allow things to percolate a little bit, allow people to take a little bit of a, and allow an off-ramp, because just as important as on-ramps are for people, off-ramps are important too. Because how many of you would sign up for something that you had no clue when it would ever end? Most people don't. There's a few, Molly, there's a few.
I have a son who's autistic, so structure is it's a life thing for me.
And I get
So
that.
I have to be structured, I have to be on the go.
Well,
I have to be-
now you know the structure. Now you know that we're planning for this. We're planning for these rhythms. Because it's important, because if there's some people who's like, man, if I start serving in kids ministry and there's no break, there's no planned break of any kind, and I have to do this till Jesus comes back, there's probably a reason we have 4 people who sign up for that. But if they know that they can commit to an on-ramp and off-ramp, on-ramp and off-ramp, people are like, I think I'm going to do kids ministry this year. And then they can, without shame, be able to take a break and come back on in the fall if they want, or take a year off. Like, it gives them the ability to come on and come off, come on and come off, and that's a good rhythm. And so with our life groups, being able to build community within, and I've been asked, and I think it was asked last week too, about the men's group, the women's group, what's going to happen to them. Here's the best analogy I have for this. How many of you, if you had a choice between a highway or an interstate when you travel, which one are you going to, how many of you are going to take the highway over the interstate?
Depends.
Depends on how many cars are going on the highway, huh?
Depends on if you're in rural or what the view is.
Well, even if you could pick an interstate in the rural settings,
Depends upon the.
most of
direction you're
us, anybody else, who would pick the interstate to travel on? Why? It's quicker. You can move around people as you need to,
Yeah.
right? We get stuck behind the truck going 62. And how many of you pass the truck and look for the way to pass the truck? How many of you just contently sit behind the truck the entire
Or
way?
fantasize running it off the road.
I mean, the truth is, most of us want speed and efficiency. Well, so Molly, you guys have been in the Wednesday night women's group. The most you guys average is like what, 25? The most?
Out there, yeah.
That's about what the men average too, right, John?
So we're gonna
25 or less, usually every week, right, Tim? So, how great would it be if we could actually have 50 between the men's groups? Or 75? Or 100? See, sometimes I think we forget that the highway isn't that exciting. It's exciting because that's what we have, and it's way better than a trail, right? But an interstate is still more efficient to have more cars going at different paces, getting to where they want to go. You can still have the one doing 65, it's like, they're just loving it, right down the interstate. That's okay, because there's the ability for others to go around at 75, or 80, or 84, if you're the one like my wife who pushes it to as far as she believes she can push it with law enforcement. Right? So there's those two. So what I'm saying is that the reason we're encouraging more than one, we're not saying stop what you're doing. What we're saying is we're adding to what you're doing. I want to see more than one men's group. I want to see more than one women's group. So we're not saying less, we're saying more. I actually have a dream at some point with our interest groups and our life groups to see 100 groups at this church. And I don't care, John, if you feel like you can, you're a very high capacity person. I think you could do 4 groups if you wanted to. And John's like, I don't know if I could do that. Okay, that's all right. But somebody around this room might say, you know what, I'll do 5 different groups. I'll do a couple interest groups, I'll do a couple life groups, and I'll meet at different times, Wednesday nights or other times. So the idea is the more boats we have, the more people we can reach. That's the idea. And so don't be afraid of that. We're not saying stop what you're doing. We're saying we're going to add to what we're doing. Okay? Does that make some sense? We also have, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. How about teenagers or middle schoolers that have
Yeah.
accepted the Lord that don't know anything? Are they going to go to one-on-one
Yes,
classes?
they are.
Okay, great.
So here's what we're excited about on this, because we proudly have talked about how we're a multi-generational church. So we should stop acting like we're not. Sometimes we're so caught up in how we've done things, we never think about what it could look like if we did something different. You know, we talk about how, man, we really wish the youth would integrate with. So why does everything have to be just youth? And then we wonder why they don't. But then we wonder why they don't integrate, but they haven't really been given a chance to do that, because they have all this stuff for them and they go to those things. But they don't go to men's group because no one said they could.
I think a lot of them feel kind of like, once they grow out of youth, they feel kind of abandoned. And there's this like, well, okay, what do I do now? I've got young adults, but I don't know anybody there.
Sure.
Or, you know, I've seen a lot of that working with youth.
So what I would say to that is we're encouraging, if there's a kid who feels like he wants to go to one-on-one to learn about baptism and communion, if there's a kid who wants to get baptized and wants to go to the class, we have no problem with that. Because if they're at a place where they feel like they can go to a class about baptism, how many of you know if my 9-year-old wants to go to a class on baptism, I'm going to let him go to the class on baptism. It's only going to benefit him, right? And so we're encouraging that. We're encouraging organic and letting the Lord lead us in that and holding everything like this, right? That's kind of how we're leading that. So, and we're also going to be doing that with the youth. So you're asking Elaine about, like, even Wednesday nights. Our Wednesday nights are going to begin to reflect a lot of that. In fact, you know, many of you are wondering about why I was going around to all the different groups this last spring. You know, I was in the women's group, I was in the men's group, I was in the youth, I was in the kids. And the reason I was doing that is because I was watching what we're doing. Because we're all about digging up the DNA, right? Who we are as a church. And so I'm watching what we're doing. You want to know what I saw? Groups. We're already doing it. Yeah. We're we're calling it what it is. We're changing the language because language is important and language creates culture. We're already a church about groups. We just didn't know we were a church about groups. If you go and watch the kids, you'll realize that all the groups and stuff that they're doing, it's all 14 kids or less. And they're breaking them up with their leaders, and they're doing that. Lisa's group is as high as that group normally would go, because the higher the group, the less participation you're going to have. That's just bottom line, right? Because the average in the men is you're going to have anywhere between 5 and 8 guys who are really interacting, and the rest are just, That's kind of how that works. And the men, same way. They're capping it right about 20, 25 people at the most. And that was the highest groups that we had. And then the youth are breaking up into what they call tribes, and we're just renaming it. We're just calling it life groups. Because they're already breaking up into small groups and discussing the message, and that was going great. And they were really growing in that and loving that. And so we're already doing it. We're just calling it what it is, and then we're just saying, let's do more of this. So that's some of the life group stuff. We are going to have life group trainings here in August. If you're interested in that, we'll talk more about that next week. And what that looks like and kind of some of those different things. And so hopefully Pastor Cody shared a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of that last week. But you remember that? Maybe not?
I didn't hear about the training.
Well, and that came out of my class last week, so he didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
That's something we talked about as a staff, like, hey, we need to put this on the calendar. So it's on the calendar in August, and also again in December, and so we're looking for what that looks like, because we need on-ramps and off-ramps for leaders too. There's going to be people who are in a life group, but after they're in a life group, they're like, I want to lead a life group. And so we're going to need to have a space to be able to train them and whatnot. And so we'll have that different, every quarter we're going to try to have a leader training. All right, well, let me share a little bit about our interest groups, because that's, I guess, what our focus is tonight. Any other questions? Because this isn't meant to be a monologue, but more of a dialogue. Okay. Well, interest groups, they're exactly what we talked, what they sound like. So what is it you like to do? Somebody tell me something you like to do.
Crochet.
Crochet? You and I have had this conversation. This is a good one. Let's start with that. So Molly talks about crafts and different things that she really loves to do, and the cool things you like to do with your crafts.
Right.
Right, blessing, the rescue mission or whatever that looks like. Making tons of quilts or whatever. And so we talked about that. It's like if you have an interest, something you like to do, you already have a third of what you need. Okay? The other two things are pretty simple. We want an interest that we can revolve our time around. We want to be able to build community with each other and grow in our faith. That's it. So think about something you like to do.
I like to fish, I like to hunt,
Okay?
I like to camp, I like to travel, and I like cross-stitch and music.
I have to be honest, Elaine, half of what you just said I was really shocked by. Which is awesome.
So was I.
Hey, if you did a hunt group, man, there might be some people that would join that group. Just saying. Camp, and Pastor Cody just started a group too. That's Central Camp, Central Camp and Hike. I think, did you get invited to that? So if you're interested in that, ask him about that. And here's the thing too: you can have more than one camping group. We don't have to have, there's already a Central Camp group, so no, you can have as many as you want. It doesn't bother me. You can have a fishing group. Mine's more fly fishing, so if yours is spin casting, do that. If it's fly fishing, do that.
You guys could get in a big fight afterwards.
We could have a competition. It'd be like that'd be fun. Maybe not. There's lots of things that you can do, because here's what I find, and this is the sad thing. How many of us have friends that we like to do stuff with? Are they in the church?
Yeah.
Here's an amazing thing about an interest. You can have friends who have the same interest, who don't even know the Lord, don't even like Jesus. And you can have people in the church that have the same interest. You know what's amazing about that? Our Central Fly group, I have invited, I don't know, you could probably fact check me on this, Ruel, because I think you're on there, aren't you? Maybe you're not on there, I don't know. I probably invited 15 of those people. There's 35 of us. Other people invited people. I don't know probably a third of the people on that group. But they were invited by somebody from the group. That's what it's supposed to be. And so when we get together, and I create an event, so I'll just let you know, we're going fishing this Saturday. We're going to go down to Upper Sluice Box, and we're going to hike down into the trails. We did the lower, and now we're going to do the upper, and we go all over the place and do this kind of thing. But I just set up an event, And whoever can make it to that event, so it's a little different than life groups where you meet on a regular basis every week or whatever. These interest groups, I said every couple weeks on a Saturday, I'm just going to put an event on there. And if you can make it, great. If you can't, that's all right. No shame in it. Make it to what you can make it to. And then we're just going to have a good time. There's been some weeks I have 4. There's been some weeks I have 35. That happened one time where we had like over 30, which was awesome. A little chaotic, but awesome. But then it's different people every time almost. And so you get together, and there's some people that are learning how to fly fish in that group. We're teaching them every time they come out. They're learning how to do it. Like Marcus, you heard him tonight. Here's what he didn't tell you, is that when we went to Shotgun Annie's, that's where we went for lunch in Wolf Creek, which was really good, by the way. Anyway, there's 4 of us there that day. It was the lowest attended one we've had, which traditionally you'd be like, oh, Here's the crazy thing. We had Marcus, we had Matt Ammons, your hubby, we had me, we had Pastor Robbie. We had one person in the teens, 20s, 30s, 40s. It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Multi-generational.
Yeah.
And we had a whole conversation at that restaurant on the baptism of the Holy Spirit. We were talking about it, and there were some questions being thrown around. There was some I don't know about this. I don't understand this. We were having spiritual conversations over fish and chips.
Wow, that's awesome.
It was awesome, and you wouldn't expect that because we're just fly fishing together, right? No, we're building community with one another. We're getting to know one another, and we're having conversations about whatever, and we're growing in our faith, and it's been pretty awesome. And so I'm just going to give you some ideas. So here's just some things that have been thrown out to me in the last 2 months. Gold panning. How many of you know Bob Rowstead? You know Bob?
Yeah.
So I'm talking to Bob one Sunday, and he says, yeah, I was just up in I don't even remember where he told me. That wasn't what I remembered the most. He said, but I had 3 guys with me that I was teaching how to gold pan. I'm like, Bob, that's a group? That's an interest group. And I started explaining to him what that is. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, I used to teach kids at elementary school how to gold pan. And I'm like, that is amazing. I'm like, you could have a multi-generation. My son would be a part of your group. Because my son wants to learn how to gold pan. Well, Bob, all you got to do is get to know these people and talk about Jesus. That's it. And do it with gold panning. So gold panning, we have, how many of you know Russ Honeywell? Okay, so he has talked to me about reloading. He's like a master reloader. He reloads ammunition all the time. How many people reload in here? Anybody?
My late husband did.
Okay.
And he was a master at it too.
There's a few. So, all of a sudden you can have a reloading group where you could do. You could do a lot of conversation while you're reloading, right?
Especially if one of us works in North Forty and has a.
See, there you go. See, I
I
knew that Donald would say something because this is his passion too. And so all of a sudden now you've got a reloading group. There's a baking group that is in the wings.
Oh.
Samantha Plaisance had talked about that. She's like, I would love to bake with people. And think about what could happen with that. You could bless people, right? You're going to need something. When you're baking and you have that, you have 4 or 5 ladies or even more than that. Even if you have just a couple ladies baking, you're going to have enough
You
to,
could have another group to eat the stuff.
in conjunction. Well, you better think about that. But you have this where you're baking, you're talking to different, about stuff, you're growing your faith, and then you're doing something, which is cool. The aspect of the interest groups is that they very well could become missional, where you're blessing people. What about the Rebel Nail Group? How many of you are part of that? Raise your hand up high so you can see your nails. So here's Tyler.
No, don't look at my nails right now. They're so bad.
So there's been a group of ladies that have been doing this nail stuff that Danny Teppo has been doing. It wouldn't be hard to talk about Jesus, growing your faith, and around an interest. Hunting has been mentioned. Hiking. Pastor Cody just started a central hiking camp group today. He added a whole bunch of people on Facebook to that. There's been conversation about a writing group, coming together and actually writing like Christian fiction or nonfiction, and actually writing and doing stuff like that together. There's been talk about a reading group getting together and actually having a reading group, and not just a reading group, but reading some pretty cool things. Motorcycle riding. An interest group that basically is a central biker gang. I'm just. Painting. Painting's been one. The quilting, I had you in there, Molly.
Yeah.
The knitting. Computer gaming was brought up. I didn't realize there was such a big.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people who computer game.
There's streamers galore
There's
out
a
there.
few already.
What I was gonna say is when I first got here, stationed here, I actually had, it turned into a ministry online where, because of the anonymousness of playing games, there was a lot of people that were just spewing hate. And when I was gaming online, I focused on encouraging people and getting to know people and building relationships just through a microphone, and it was amazing how you could speak into people's lives in a way that was impactful, meaningful, and they would take it. And I realized what I was doing. I was like, oh my God, I'm not an evangelist, but here I am, you know. And there were opportunities where I got to share my testimony while playing Call of Duty. And it was just the strangest thing, but it totally happens.
There's a lot of different categories that people need to be reached. That's the thing. Is it's like we're not going to reach everyone doing the same thing all the time, right?
Right.
There's board gaming. Conversations about that. You guys board game like nothing. I mean, your husband tells me about the board gaming that happens with the Fick household.
Yep.
Just saying, that's a whole thing. I mentioned Pinnacle today. I was surprised there's not more Pinnacle players around here, but here's another one. This is kind of crazy. So Pastor Weston and I, we went to Double Barrel Coffee House about a month and a half ago now, and met with 2 Mormon missionaries. Because I get these messages on Facebook, like videos, like, hey Josh, you know, blah, 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 like I just want to tell you how Jesus changed my life and I want to get to know you. And so I was like, hey Weston, we should go hang out with them. And so we did, which was really funny when they wanted to go to a coffee house and drink coffee, which I had fun with that. But anyway, so then Weston and I are talking, we're like, you know what? We could actually have a group that evangelizes Mormons. Like we actually hang out with Mormons and get to know them. Which is crazy, by the end of the conversation, they realized they weren't going to convert us. But there was a little bit of a, I mean, you could see that and feel that a little bit.
There's a youth pastor that used to teach his students how to evangelize and witness by doing mission trips to Salt Lake and letting them go door to door.
Yep.
And he said it was amazing just how it taught them how to share their faith. Because they would get questioned about it because they're going up against, you know, a different belief system.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and we really got to know these 2 guys. And then we got invited to go play basketball with them on Saturdays. What's that tell you? I mean, it went pretty well. I mean,
You should check Larry because he has a friend whose family is Mormon.
okay.
He's a nice kid. I've talked to him several times, but I'm just watching him and like, so what did you talk about today?
Yeah.
And so when you talk basketball, he is a basketballer, and so I think it would be a good
Okay.
thing.
That'd be fun. I mean, these groups are meant to bring people in. You know, and so if we can actually get a group that doesn't hate the Mormons but actually loves them, and we told them, we said, we love you guys. I mean, they reached out to us, you know, specifically to me. It's like, and my Facebook is pretty clear on what I do for a living. It's like, why did you reach out to me? Something you needed something. You know, and so it's a pretty cool avenue. So that's an interest group.
I lived in Utah for 3 years, and most Mormons, especially missionaries, once they find out you're Pentecostal, they won't go near you. But like even here, when I was part of Young Adults, one of my best friends at work was Mormon. He was kind of oversaw a lot of the young adults groups in Montana and Wyoming. And we had an airsoft thing where we had our young adults meet up with their young adults, and it was absolutely amazing. It was a great time. Everybody had a good time. And it was a great opportunity to meet and spend time and break bread with these people. And it really dispelled a lot of misconceptions that both sides had about each other and just built a lot of good bridges.
Yeah. There's so many things you can do. I mean, well, I think you mentioned airsoft too. There's a whole community of people who play airsoft. Michael, he plays airsoft back there, or doesn't play, he does airsoft.
No, I do.
Yeah. I mean, so you have airsoft, you got paintball, you got I mean, I've heard people doing dirt biking. I once did a ride with, I've never really been on a four-wheeler much. I know I've lived in Montana, I'm a native and all these different things. I just didn't spend much time on four-wheelers. But we ended up four-wheeling on the 40 miles of trail in the Black Hills, South Dakota, which was a cool experience. I'd never done that before, but because of this group I was a part of, yeah, there you go. And so like teaching people how to do these interests with you, but I mean the interests are so far and wide on what you can do, but the goal is sharing the interest, sharing life, because it's a tragedy if the place that's known for life and for building real community fails to tap into enjoying a life within relationships with other people. Wouldn't it be a tragedy if the church is the last place that people go to do life together and actually enjoy each other?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's how we treat church. It's like, oh, well, I don't do stuff with those people. I just go to church and I just, So actually being in the church and doing life together and doing things that we love together, I think that's glorifying to God. Do everything you do it to the Lord, right?
Yeah.
Elaine, did you have something?
I'm listening.
Awesome. So you guys have any questions? Because I have tons of notes. Here's my notes I haven't really touched. I'm at the top. So I don't have to go through all of that. I don't want to just spew information. I want to be able to actually answer questions.
If we wanted to start a specific group, how would we go about it?
Good question. So next week we're going to have a system in which we can, you guys can say, hey, I want to start or be a part of a life group or an interest group or both. Okay, and that's kind of where we're going to start. And if you're interested in leading one, that's going to be the most important step, because we're going to be able to, we'll give you more ways to get connected as the fall gets closer. But if you're really wanting to lead one, we need to be able to follow up with you and invite you to the training and give you what you need to be able to do that. So I don't know if that really answers your question. Is that working okay, Michael?
It just stopped and turned it back on.
Okay. Awesome. It's good to have techie people. Any other questions before I jump into some other stuff? That's a little bit more just details about how things work. Was it something I said?
I don't know.
Well, so let me talk about when on interest groups. The only thing, because we really believe in the importance of it being organic, which somebody kind of asked me what that really means. Organic is something that is not forced. What you're not going to see from us in this round of life groups and interest groups is you're not going to see us doing this with it. Okay? The biggest thing is that with different ways that groups have been done before, it can be really tempting for us to say, oh, it has to be done this way, you can only have this many people in it. Now, I'm going to encourage you, I mean, like our men's and women's, like, expect it to go a little smaller the more we do life groups. Don't freak out about that. If you have 10 to 15, that's not going to be a bad size, because you want everyone to be participating. That's the goal. You don't want your life group being 100 people, because then at that point we just need to add another service, okay? But what you do want is connection. And so if it's defeating connection, we got to fix that. The goal is to be connecting with people and with the Lord, right? Mm-hmm. And so we don't want to defeat that. And so if we're having larger groups that are defeating that purpose, it's in all of our best interest to say, what is it we need to do to fix that, to help with that? And one of the ways we do that is by adding more on-ramps for people to be a part of things, to spread out the wealth, so to speak, okay? Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that is important with interest groups is that we don't want to take away from our Wednesday night 301 life groups. When it comes to Sunday mornings, before service to when service is done, that window, the only thing we're asking is that interest groups not be happening during Sunday morning service that time. Okay, like when our 101 life groups are going on, our 201 life group is going on. We don't want those interest groups competing with that. We want you to use the other times of the week to do that, right? Because we realize that life groups are great, but we don't want to take away from our one gathering every week where we're all together. And that's important. And so then also Wednesday nights, we don't want to compete against that. We want to be able to increase our ability, increase our effectiveness, not decrease it. And so we want to be able to provide a place where people can grow faster, which they're going to grow faster in life groups, but they're going to see more deep connections in the interest groups. What most likely will happen is as people are involved in interest groups, they're going to start being more curious about your life groups. Because they're like, hey, I kind of like this building a relationship. I really like fly fishing. But I'm kind of liking what was happening with like Marcus. He's like, I went to this thing thinking I'm going to be fly fishing, which we did do. But then he came out realizing, oh wow, there is some relationship that was being built here I didn't expect. What's that do? It cultivates this sense of, maybe I want that. And so then you do both, right? And so we're going to really encourage Wednesday nights to do 301 life groups. Like life groups here at the church is going to be encouraged, and that's one thing I did talk about last week. I don't know if Pastor Cody mentioned that we're encouraging groups, especially that have kids, unless you feel like as a life group, you can handle having children running around your house. Which not everybody can, but we've seen great success with the young adults. Ruel's been a part of that. I don't know if you want to share any of that at all. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but because you guys have been doing this for a little while.
Yeah, well, kids is always a challenging dynamic, obviously. But yeah, I think just having the vision that, like, again, it's, you know, the church is about family, you know, so it's seeking to integrate the family as much as you can into ministry, into those relationships and the discipleship. So it's been a lot of learning curves and trying to how to work that together, but I think it's worth the effort of, you know, making the family involved in those things.
And I've heard a lot about the groups of the kids and whatnot, and when there's issues, because there's issues that arise, right? You're going to have children who you have a discipline moment, right? You're like, okay, something bad happened in the middle of what we're doing. How do we navigate that? And then just working through it right then and there. Just within the context of the group, and then going on with life. Just as if it's a family event at Christmas and something happened and you need to take care of it. And so there's been some great success with that. And so we encourage you to say, that's something you want to try as a life group, give it a whirl. But if you're like, well, we need childcare, then we're really encouraging Wednesday nights. Because like we already provide that. We'll have life groups for the kids, which is awesome. My wife, who's just stepped into that role as the kids pastor overseeing the kids ministry here at Central, she, in a volunteer way, she has just started a new curriculum that in August she'll be starting that. That's going to be awesome. Sunday mornings is going to be like their main Sunday morning service for the kids, like when they get up there for the sermon time. And then on Wednesday nights, it's actually going to be small groups. It's going to be life groups with the kids. And so they're actually literally mirroring what we're doing. And so the kids will have life groups. The youth will have life groups. And so we'll have all that already at the church. So why reinvent the wheel if you do need childcare? So there's two different options. So like when it comes to the interest groups, that's why we're encouraging. It's like, don't do it Wednesday nights, because we don't want to take away from people serving in the kids ministry and, you know, and in the youth ministry and all the life groups that are happening here at Central or outside of the church as well. We don't want to take away from that because it takes a lot of manpower to do that. But other times, it's like if you need to do it on Saturdays, that's when we do the fly fishing. If you want to do it on a Thursday night or a Friday night or a Monday night or, you know, or Sunday afternoon after church. There's a lot of people who do hiking after church on Sunday. And so that's just kind of what we're asking about frequency. You can do them weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. We encourage that. Some of these interest groups are going to be seasonal. Like our fly fishing group, we're talking about going year-round. We're talking about tying flies and building rods and you know, and doing some different things throughout like the winter time when it's really cold. And because in Montana, you're kind of a 3-season fly fisherman. As much as we all want to be brave and be a 4-season, you know, we don't want to die from frostbite. So, you know, hypothermia.
Or a spinner rod comes in handy.
But for some groups, it's like hunting. Hunting's going to be kind of seasonal, right? You're not going to be able to do that year round. So some of these interest groups are going to stop, and then you're going to start something else.
It's still good to shoot when it's in winter, so you know what your ballistics are.
Well, there you go. We know. That's a whole other group you could do too, shooting group or whatever. But I'm not saying you don't do it, Donald. I'm just saying that for the most part, the group will take a little bit of a lull, you know, because it's not quite the busy season for that. But then you might be able to do another group and flip-flop seasons, you know. So that's just some thoughts.
Too.
There you go. You can see where his passion's at, right? Any other questions at all?
So basically, the interest groups would be outside of our Wednesday evenings.
Yep.
Wednesday evenings would somewhat be the same as what we've been doing, but just labeled differently.
It'll be labeled differently, and then you'll probably see a little bit of a different way in which we do our Wednesday nights and the aspect of how we present. And so you're going to see a lot more of our rooms be, well, you have a couch in here.
I don't know if you guys noticed that. But there's a couch in here. You're going to begin seeing some of our rooms, all of our rooms, become more home feeling, similar to downstairs. Because we're really encouraging that people are going to grow most in a circle. I was actually sharing this with someone today, that it's interesting that even in Jesus' day, the method in which they taught was kind of interesting. You know, you had the monologue in a temple setting, but then within the normal weekly life of the church, you had a dialogue setting. So when we were in Israel in 2019, we actually had the privilege of standing. You've been there, I bet you. Have you been to Magdala? There's a first century synagogue there. One that Jesus most likely preached in, because it was during the time of Jesus. Okay, it's right on the southwest side of Galilee. And in that synagogue, it's interesting, and Capernaum had the same design, but the synagogue, when you walked into the synagogue, into the main room, it's basically a rectangle. So there's benches along every side. Benches up here, over there, and over there. And then you would walk into the Torah room, where the men would study the Torah, and it's the same. It's smaller, but it's a rectangle room with benches. Because what would happen is after the teaching was done, they would sit around and discuss what the teacher just taught. It was built into the life of the early church and during Jesus' time that they would discuss. It was normal for them to actually grow in community and banter back and forth about what was said. And so it's normal. I'd say it's spiritual for us to be able to have times where where there's a monologue, where we're hearing and we're taking in, we're soaking that in. And that's really our Sunday morning experience with whoever's preaching. So that's kind of that experience. But Wednesday nights, to have the same one and not ever give our church an ability to have a square conversation, or rather circle. I've heard it said that life is done in circles, right? Within groups of people. If you never have that ability to sit across a circle from someone and have a conversation, you're missing an aspect of discipleship and growth and learning. And so one of the things that we're really focusing on doing is creating more circle environments in which we can actually have conversations across the room with one another, rather than just having a teaching that's traditionally up here. Because it's interesting, Jesus didn't have very many of these moments. We saw the Sermon on the Mount, right? We see these different times when the crowds gather, where he disseminates a word and they listen. But then how did he spend the rest of his time? With his disciples in conversation and doing life together. And so we're just following that model. That's kind of what we're doing. And so that's so you'll see a little bit of that. So you might walk into a room that doesn't have tables and a lectern, but you'll see circles in which you guys find a seat in the circle, and you grab a cup of coffee and some snacks and some different things. You get to know one another a little bit. You grow, you pray together, you read the word together, you do the study together, and you unpack that. And so that's probably what you'll see more or less, is that's going to be changing, and we're going to be encouraging all of our life group leaders to do that. Make this conversational. Give people a chance to go back and forth a little bit. Because otherwise, stuff like this could just put people to sleep after a while, right? And we already preached 45 minutes on a Sunday, and I don't think we want to hear, nobody should be doing longer than that on a Wednesday night.
Right?
I'm just saying. If they're preaching longer than me, if they're teaching you longer than I am on a Sunday morning, more power to you. Just saying.
Well, it depends upon the what we're talking about and how many questions are coming up too.
Sure. Well, I think part of it too, Molly, is I think that with this format, it's almost conditioned that I do the talking and you do the listening. Because school's that way. Right? For the most part, what's your job? Right? If I'm up here, it means I have the floor and I speak, that's why I have to kind of break this down a little bit and say, it's okay, give me some feedback, because in here, we're used to this, and we know what we're supposed to do. And we're like, when he asks a question, he means it rhetorically, don't answer it. Right? Because then Sunday mornings, what do? I ask a question, do I expect someone in the back to be like, yeah, actually, that's not, and they just kind of go off on something? How many of you be like, you're not supposed to do that? Right? Because we all are conditioned to know that in that setting, it's rhetorical. You should just internally think about it, because it's that kind of teaching, it's that kind of learning that you're in. So when we have this set up like this, it's hard for you to engage in this moment. There might be some questions, and some brave people might say something, But the rest of us are going to be like, I'm going to wait until he's done and then I'm going to ask him. Because then I can do it face to face. Right? There's a difference there. You know? So, just a thought. Any other thoughts, questions?
Got one.
Yeah,
If we
Donald.
did want to use the church, would it be an issue, or it'd just be a matter of coordinating with you if we wanted to use the building?
With the office, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then just see what that is. You can't shoot in the church though. Her husband would have a heart attack. That wouldn't go over very well. Pastor, there's 3 holes in the wall and I need to know how they got there. Well, you know, Donald was saying something about groups and grouping his, all that. Take her down. Michael?
Does it, I mean, it depends on what you're shooting though.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's true. Should I say something about your group?
I just thought it was a bore site laser. You know?
My brother back here, he's got a golf simulator.
No way.
Yeah, like legit with like the grass, turf, and everything. And so we are going to set that up in the church at some point for the golf group. There's going to be a central golf group where they can literally, play around together on the simulator. So I'm telling you, there's going to be some. How many of you would sign up for that? I'd sign up. Yeah. See, there'd be a few of us that would do it. So there's no. That's why we're excited about this. I mean, life groups are going to be great. You know, we're going to do the curriculums. We're going to have the sermon. Did Pastor Cody talk about that last week? The sermon-based groups. Did he a little bit? That's going to be awesome. We're going to give you the ability to be able to do videos through the app or online or whatever that we're going to record after Sunday morning. It'll be ready for you. It's basically a sermon recap video, 5 minutes or less, that just kind of recaps the sermon for you quickly, goes through the scripture quickly, and gives you some really challenging questions to go through as a group. And then you can use that as material if you want. We're going to provide that for you so you can walk with the sermons, walk through the week, do life together through the week, and then we actually talk about and unpack the sermon a little bit more, what we're studying as a church. We're going to have curriculum available. We're going to walk through that with you, going through books of the Bible, some different things. And so it's going to be pretty awesome. And that's great, that whole side of it. But then this interest stuff, it's like we're giving us simple ways. 'Cause that's one thing for us as a church. You're going to find this, you're going to hear this from me a lot, is I despise redundancy. I don't like something that just seems like it's overdone. And it's like, oh, we have this, but they're all kind of doing the same thing, and they're not working together. I like the simplicity of thought. Keep it simple, stupid, right? How many of you grew up with that? Like the acronym KISS? Keep it simple. I live by that. I really want to keep it simple. And so as a church, recognizing that simplicity is not a bad thing. If people have no idea how to get involved in the church and it's not easy, that's some of the reason why we don't have volunteers, and some of the reason why we don't have people. That's why sometimes the back door, the figurative back door of the church, where people come in the front door, first-time visitor, and then they leave quietly out the back door, you don't know where they went. That's many times why that happens, is because they don't know what to do, they don't know where to go. And so keeping it simple is important. And so having life groups that are on Sundays and Wednesdays and then throughout the week, and then having these interest groups and doing 90% of our work through these groups together and allowing people like you to be involved in the lives of people and doing the works of the ministry, which I think is what we're called to do as pastors, is equip you for the works of ministry, right? To do the work of ministry. And if we see that happening at Central, and that's our goal, is to do life through life groups, that keeps it pretty easy. And then we can come together and celebrate what we've done. Sometimes I think we see Sundays as only coming in from a wounded week, or only sending us out into the world only to come back again. I see Sundays as propelling us for what God's about to do through the week, and then coming back to celebrate what He did. That's how I see Sundays. And so it's just a thought. All right, any other questions? Otherwise, we might be the first group done.
No, Weston, they're already done over there.
Who got done? Weston did.
Weston.
Pastor Weston got done. He said, I don't know how he does it. He says, bang, gets it done. He says, this is what's going to happen. Pastor Weston's done. Pastor Cody might get done the same time I do. And Pastor Robbie's going to be late. Every single time. Doesn't matter what we do. It does not matter what we do. That's what happens. I love them all. I love you all. This is
that's truth.
all right. Well, I am gonna pray for what God's gonna do, and then next week, I cannot say this enough. That's for me to be done. That's what it is. I cannot say this enough. Please hear me. Don't miss next week. There's going to be a challenge that I think is going to rattle you to your core, that God's going to put on you. And I really believe that. It's going to encourage you. It's going to put you in the fight. And we're going to share some testimonies and some different things that God's doing. And so you just don't want to miss that. Launching us into our Sabbath through July, and then coming back to do leader training in August. It's going to be good, so don't miss it. It'll be recorded, but it won't be the same. So. Well, Father, I thank you for tonight. Lord, I thank you for this group of people that I love dearly, and I know you love even more. And so, Jesus, I just pray that as we enter into this next season as a church, God, we know that you've gone before us. Lord, we know you're the God who goes before us, who stands at our rear guard. Lord, you're the one that surrounds us. Lord, you lead us with a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day. Lord, we know that your Holy Spirit goes with us. And so, Lord, I just pray, God, that you would encourage the people here, Lord, that it's okay to have courage for what's about to happen. Lord, it's okay to be excited about what you're going to do. Lord, we know that things change all around us, but we know you change not. You're the same yesterday, today, and forever, Lord. And we thank you that as we go forward, Lord, we're going to experience what you want us to experience, Lord. And it's going to be life-changing, and we're going to see the church grow, and we're going to see people come into the kingdom. Lord, and it's going to be a magnificent thing we can give you glory for and just give you praise for as we celebrate the testimonies of what you have done through this, Lord. And we'll look back to this and say, look at the faith that we had as a people as we went forward. Lord, give us strength and encouragement, the courage that you asked Joshua to have. Lord, give us that, we pray. In Jesus' name, we love you. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. We have cookies downstairs. We have gluten-free cookies too that my wife made that Pastor Robbie calls crack cookies because they're that good. So I don't know if I can say that.
It's done.
Thanks for being here tonight, you guys.